here it is. Finally time to review the first episode of the new Charmed series. I want to start off by saying to all those people who said they would base whether or not to watch the show on what I say about it, please don't do that. Please make this decision for yourself and not because of what other people say. These are my opinions, I speak for me, not the masses, and you may find you enjoy aspects I didn't. In this review, my opinions have no relation to the original. I am judging this as its own body of work and not comparing it to the original unless I have to. In fact, I reached out to several people, some who were excited for the show, some who weren't even going to watch it. I wanted their feedback and I was going to include it in this video, and several people did tell me they would send that to me. I did say I needed it the day the episode aired, which was today, but no one sent me anything, so I don't have the feedback to include, so let's just get on with it. Also, forgive me, I'm battling a bloodshot eye. Charmed is an American fantasy drama television series developed by Jessica O'Toole, Amy Roden, and Jenny Snyder-Urman. It is the reboot of the WB series of the same name created by Constance M. Burge, which ran from 1998 to 2006. It follows the lives of three sisters, Macy, Mel, and Maggie, who after the death of their mother discover they are the Charmed Ones, the most powerful witches, and together they possess the power of three. I was worried that I would watch the first episode and begrudgingly enjoy some aspects of it, as that does tend to happen with me, and so I must now inform you all that I hated this episode. I actually hated it more than I had anticipated. At most, I just thought I'd dislike it. Turns out I flat out loathe it. And allow me to tell you why. Yes, this one is going to be lengthy. I was concerned about the length of this video until I remembered people want to hear this, so here it is. There was not one thing I enjoyed in this episode, and believe me, I was looking for something. I had heard some good things about Macy's character, played by Madeline Mantock, so I was focused hard on her, and forgive me, but I do not agree with the positive remarks on her character. Macy is an intellectual, which is great, but she's too intellectual. Every element of what is going on is being broken down into quantifiable data and scientific study when Macy is around. Nothing is about magic with her, everything is science, and the science aspects were so dominating that it didn't feel like a TV show about magic or witches. Not to mention, she reminds the other characters and the audience repeatedly that she's a scientist. You're smart, we get it. Thanks to Macy's scientific prowess, she deduces that she can kill an entity possessing someone or something by throwing bicarb on them. That's right, your basic household products are now weapons against demons. So right now it feels like nothing makes these girls special if any person can stop a demon with their cleaning products. Next is Mel, played by Melanie Diaz, who had, I'm afraid, the worst acting of the bunch. Now, in all honesty, the only person who did any good acting was Valerie Cruz, who plays their mother Marisol, but she's dead in the first 5 minutes, so doesn't count. Everything about her and her character feels forced. She overacts when it comes to her powers, despite the fact the freezing is occurring while she's not even moving. So it's hard to associate this power with her because she's never saying or doing anything to actively trigger it, it just happens. Mel is also our leading lesbian, and while I appreciate that they don't have her walking around saying she's a lesbian, the chemistry between her and her girlfriend was horrendous. Mel and her girlfriend Nico, played by Ellen Tamaki, remind me of when I was younger and we played Spin the Bottle and it landed on two people who hated each other and they were just trying to get the kiss over with. Their kissing reminded me exactly of that. There was no chemistry between them whatsoever, and it annoyed me how Nico couldn't even touch Mel in a supportive way without Mel reading into it as Nico coming onto her, because naturally if two lesbians touch, it's flirtation. Mel is aggressive, violent, and plays into the horrible stereotype that all lesbians are men-hating activists. This is definitely horrible representation for the LGBT community. Then we have Maggie, played by Sarah Jeffrey, who is another who excelled at bad acting. Maggie is given the role of comic relief, only she isn't remotely funny and not a single joke landed. All her jokes did were make me cringe. She is a ditzy airhead who cares more about popularity than anything else. While they attempt to make her quest for acceptance be a way of coping with her mother's death, it backfires seeing as how she was already doing this prior to her death, so your emotional excuse doesn't work. Maggie is also a walking advert for those commercials that warn women of what to do and not to do in the event of an assault. First she walks through the woods at night and is being warned not to, but she does it anyway. Secondly, she feels threatened during a rush party and hides in the bathroom to text for help. And each moment is delivered in a comedic way, so it feels more like these moments are parodying assault awareness videos instead of actually trying to teach the audience anything. There is not an ounce of chemistry between our sisters. They don't look alike, they don't have anything in common, and there is no spark. Yet by the end of the episode, they are acting like they have been sisters and best friends for their entire lives. This may be what they're selling, but I'm not buying it. Every interaction between them made it feel like three best mates brought their three girlfriends over and the girlfriends were forced to mingle in the next room. It was awkward and uncomfortable and once again, forced. There is no progression to their bond. It's instantaneous, and I'm not buying it. The plot is absolutely 100% atrocious. Worst thing about it is how rushed it was. The pacing wasn't there, Mom dies in the first 5 minutes, the girls are witches in the first 10, and everything is neatly brought together and ready for a full season 30 minutes later. This does not work at all. As a TV series, you can let the characters grow slowly, let them breathe, let us get used to them, but you tried to sell everything in one episode and jump to the end result, and it's not organic. The script work is some of the worst script work I've seen. The dialogue was cringeworthy at every turn. I couldn't even laugh. I was just reminded of every bad, cheesy, low-budget horror film I've had to sit through this October, and it deserves a place among them. From start to finish, the dialogue doesn't stop talking about consent for a single second. Every character makes a speech about consent, even during a demon attack. A demon tries to kill Maggie, but it's called sexual assault because it's a male attacking her. The possessed boyfriend of hers even had to ask for permission to kiss her first. That's how much this show is pushing the victim narrative. Yet funny how he has to ask for her consent to kiss her, but she can kiss him without consent when he's half unconscious and unable to even understand his surroundings. Oh, okay, so only men need consent from women. Got it. This whole episode was a never-ending parade of men bashing. All it does is hate against men. It's the biggest anti-men campaign I've ever seen. Mel hates Harry simply because he's a man. Mel hates all men. All men are evil. All men are demons. All men assault women. Mel punches a male student in the face and she justifies it because he said something horrible. He actually didn't. He voiced an honest and valid opinion. He talked about innocent until proven guilty, due process, and that he didn't agree with how Mel's mother had gone about her mission against this professor. So Mel busted his nose. Because what this show tells us is men aren't welcome to an opinion, and if you say anything a woman doesn't agree with, she has permission to beat you up. But if you touch a woman, it's assault. This is not a feminist. A real feminist would be speaking on how anyone can be a victim, on how anyone can be abused, but all this show did was paint men as the enemy and women as saints. Actually, no, it doesn't paint women as saints. While the dialogue has pro-women speeches and women talking about how strong they are constantly written as victims. This episode is perpetuating victim culture as opposed to calling out rape culture. During a protest rally, the women are protesting against sexual assault against women specifically, not assault against anyone in general, again saying it's okay to assault men, just not women. However, the men protesting weren't disagreeing with them. They weren't protesting that the professor was innocent. They weren't protesting that it's okay to hurt women. If you listen, they were chanting, "Not all men." They were saying not all men are rapists, and if the courts have decided someone is innocent, we shouldn't be acting like a lynch mob going after them. So in this regard, I'm siding with the male protesters. Even when Mel is quick to accept her role as a witch, she says, strong women throughout history were called witches. She's even seeing being a witch as a protest platform. She's also incorrect. Yes, women who dared speak out were called witches, but you know who else was called witches and killed? Midwives, healers, rape victims, prostitutes. If you were a woman and you breathed, you were labeled a witch. Being a witch has nothing to do with being a strong woman. After all, men can be witches too, but I forgot, this show is anti-men. Another thing this show does, which falls under the women are victims umbrella, is say that any woman who has a drink is a drunk and therefore unable to consent or make any rational decision. Marisol had one, I repeat, one glass of wine and her own children label her as a drunk. When detectives speak of her accident, they refer to how she'd been drinking that night. One glass of wine does not make you fall out a window. What the fuck? Then Macy triggers her abilities in a bar, sending a bottle flying across the room. She says she's drunk to explain her actions, even though she barely had one bottle of beer and she never even moved. Why does this show keep painting women as unable to hold their liquor? And who says I'm drunk to excuse something weird? She would have been better off saying, holy shit, what was that? She doesn't know what it was. She didn't know it was her. She can play stupid and get away with it, but no, she's drunk. I hate that in a 10-minute period, Harry, their white lighter, broke down their entire heritage, their purpose, their powers, and everything about them. He broke it down and condensed it into a boring monologue that leaves you not wondering anything. Thanks for telling us absolutely everything. He specifies that these women aren't destined to save the innocent, they're destined to stop the apocalypse. Far more dramatic and grandiose, because just helping people is boring, I guess. He also explains their abilities to them, but here is the kicker. He attributes their abilities to negative emotional traits, like Mel can freeze time because she has control issues. Maggie can read minds because she is insecure and desperate for approval. So you gave them powers, but you associated those powers with weakness and basically insulted them. Well, this is going great. Harry also informs them that they have 48 hours to decide if they want to be witches because, quote, being a witch is a fully pro-choice enterprise. You may think this is an original plot point, but it actually is copied from season 4 of Charmed. In the second episode of season 4, both Leo and Cole tell Piper and Phoebe that the Source may be trying to turn Paige evil, because long ago both sides made an agreement that a new witch has 48 hours to choose between good and evil. Neither side can force the witch's will, but they can seduce them into a choice. So before you go thinking this aspect of the episode is new and fresh, just remember once again, the original did it first. The powers and abilities and the special effects behind them are ghastly. This show looks painfully low budget, and while the demons are written overly modern to the point where demons use blenders and white lighters are encouraged to walk and not orb, the effects, however, look old and cheap. The girls get little jingles to let us know they use their abilities instead of making hand gestures or making any body movement at all. Maggie goes out of her way to trigger her ability when running away by bumping into everyone she walks by. The acting in this moment was bad because it was clear the actress was doing it on purpose. Her ability is probably the most useless because even when she does hear someone's thoughts, the thoughts are obvious and sound just like what someone has just said. They also don't remotely help her fight evil at all. Macy tells her sisters how she is still upset her mother abandoned her. Maggie touches her and reads her mind and is surprised to learn her thoughts are lonely and sad. How is that surprising? She just said she was abandoned. No shit, she was lonely and sad as a child. Way to state the obvious. White Lighters orbing looks like they learned apparition at Hogwarts. White Lighters healing is abrupt and looks like they got their glowing hands from Iron Man. Possessed people look like vampires from the Vampire Diaries. Possessed dogs, which are a sign the owner is possessed, look like the dog Milo in The Mask right after he puts on the mask. It wasn't scary, it was laughable. The list goes on. The camera work is also pretty bad. We have random unnecessary close-ups with blurred backgrounds until the character comes into focus for no reason. The big final magical confrontation was literal smoke and mirrors and just looked over the top and cheesy as hell and also makes no sense. All three sisters say the spell, but Macy was the only one to read the spell. The other two didn't know it, yet they managed to repeat and copy her perfectly after hearing the spell once. And it's in Latin. That makes no sense. It's not even good Latin. Yes, some of the words mean real words in English, but when you put the words together, they don't translate into anything coherent. So they literally just stringed Latin words together and said, this will do. If you translate some Latin spells, Egyptian spells, or Irish spells from the original Charmed, they do translate into coherent English. So they were authentic to the culture they were representing and did translate well, meaning you use them correctly. This so far doesn't seem to do that. I suppose the fact we have two demons in this episode is meant to be clever, but it's not. The possessing demon makes no sense and appears randomly and without cause or reason. Our official demon, who supposedly put a girl in a coma with drugs after sexually assaulting her, makes no sense. Why would a demon do human things? Why does a demon need drugs? Why does a demon do anything human at all? The worst thing was when they revealed the demon's face. Oh boy. Before I say it, let us reflect on all the ways this episode has ripped off other shows. Death of their mother in the opening reminds me of The Secret Circle. They use the same house from Witches of East End. Their Book of Shadows is near identical to the Book of Moons from Beautiful Creatures. Hell, their poster is a duplicate of the poster for the 2015 movie Demimonde. The end of the episode implying the girls' mission this season will be to find out what happened to their mother. That's very supernatural. The boys come together to find out what happened to their dad. Remember, Dad's been on a hunting trip and he hasn't been home in a few days? Very that. Harry's powers look like they came from Harry Potter and Iron Man, and the dog looks like the dog from The Mask when he goes through his change. But this demon is by far the worst ripoff of the bunch because it's the only one you cannot even for a second say isn't a ripoff. This demon, with a name I've already forgotten, is a fucking White Walker. Look at this blue-eyes dude and tell me that's not a White Walker. Yeah, they're ripping off Game of Thrones now too. For months, this show has boasted about being fresh and original, and yet every single thing in it comes from other shows and movies. I mean, first of all, you're a reboot, so by definition, you're automatically unoriginal and not fresh. But to have this much pulled from other sources is fucking sad. Despite these magical elements, the show doesn't feel magical or even enchanting. It's far more sciencey and human than magical. Like having Macy say she wants to be a witch so she can study magic and win a Nobel Prize. Okay, so she wants to out magic to the world so she can win an award. Just lovely. The entire script is very on the nose. It forces its narrative on you, whether you want it or not. At the end, a poor guy who just got stabbed and nearly died, instead of being sympathetic to him or showing them they are the same or anything wholesome, these three women turned on him, telling him he can go say what he wants because it will be he said, she said. First of all, two of those girls didn't even know him. And the guy did nothing wrong. He was wrong place, wrong time, and they treated him like shit. He was in shock and they were horrible to him, again bashing him. This is not empowering. This is just nasty and aggressive and mean-spirited. There is also a flaw in the mythos. Harry tells them after 48 hours if they choose not to be witches, they lose their memory of being witches, and knowing each other, not wanting to forget their new sisters, they opt for being witches, which is sweet. But it also means they accept their new roles under selfish reasons, and it also makes no sense because Macy introduced herself and came to the house prior to them getting their powers. She saw the house, she would have returned even if her memories were erased. So to say without this they would not be sisters is entirely incorrect. I think the only smart thing this episode did was at the end have us question if Harry is good or bad. We have no evidence he is what he says, he could be a wolf in sheep's clothing, so it's very clever as a plot point and it does create a cohesive story that can continue on into the next episode and string them together. But this was the only smart thing this episode did. Even the spirit board they used was so cheap. The spirit board looks old and cheap and the Book of Shadows looks brand new. I think they mixed them up. Now, all of these things are me commenting on the technical aspects of the show. As you can see, I liked virtually nothing and I've given my reasons. But I have a couple other issues I have to mention. Many might not agree, hell, you might not agree with any of this, but it is still how I feel and I won't change my opinion to suit someone else's way of thinking. Firstly, this show does not represent women of color at all. Yes, there are women of color, but does the show speak to what it means to be a woman of color as it said it would? No. If anything, this show proves that this was just a scheme to get in viewers. Regardless of paternity, their mother Marisol is Latina, so her daughters by blood would be at least half Latina. But the studio casts an African American woman and an African Caribbean woman to play Latin women. Melanie Diaz is Latin heritage. Sarah Jeffrey, however, has stated she's African American, not Latina. And Madeline Mantock has said she's African Caribbean. So when you're talking about diverse casting and representing minorities, why did you miscast the actresses? Because you don't care, that's why. Hundreds of Latin women would have given their left tit to play a role representing their heritage, but instead you gave it to people not even remotely associated with it. Madeline Mantock said to prepare for the role of a Latin woman, she learned Spanish. I know I'm whiter than fucking Snow White if you take off my makeup, but even I know being Latin has nothing to do with speaking Spanish. I can speak Spanish. A racist thug in the South can speak Spanish. Learning Spanish doesn't mean you have any understanding of what it means to be of the Latin community, and to chalk a culture up to nothing more than a language for me feels offensive and ignorant. The show's biggest tribute to the original can be found when Maggie opens the book to a page on Melinda Warren, who supposedly is the first witch of the Vera line now too. This does not upset me because it's illogical and a dumb tribute. It upsets me because you just whitewashed the Vera family tree. The cast and crew kept talking about embracing and depicting culture and multiculturalism, and yet there isn't any in this episode. This episode, and probably the rest of the show, depicts white culture, West culture, Western practices. You have never-ending stereotypes, including the stereotype of Greek sorority culture not being about culture or where Greek houses came from, but about white rich girls being snobby bitches. A stereotype I am so sick of. The biggest root to these girls' culture was their heritage, their family, their ancestry, and you made it white. Melinda, her mother, her daughter, all white women, all white American women. Now, being their mother is Latin, a part of their heritage is Latin too, but not the magic. The magic is officially rooted in Salem. You promised culture, you gave none. I saw women of color being written like white women. How can you now write in brujeria or any form of Hispanic magic when you just took away their Hispanic roots? Nothing about this was original, nor was it fresh. It does not send a positive message, it is not empowering, and it is not a tribute to the original. People may love this, and they have every right to, but please don't try to tell me this is meant to be sending a positive political message about anti-Trump or the Me Too movement. You just made a mockery of the movement. You just made a point as to why male victims don't come forward, and to even imply Trump started a magical apocalypse just further takes the magic out of the show. When I was saying all this and thinking all this, I was angry. I don't remember the last time a TV show angered me or offended me so much, but now that I've said it all, I'm just sad. I'm sad that this is what passes for powerful representation of diversity and acceptance. This show should be ashamed of itself. If you want to support it, you have my blessing, but this won't get any support from me. I said all I've needed to say. I won't be reviewing future episodes, so for now I will resume my 31 Days of Halloween marathon where I can watch movies from the 70s that were more empowering than this. So, that's it for me. I'm done. No more to say. And until next time, bye. Thank you.